Council is Jim Brett, as we all know, and I'd like to introduce Jim for the purposes of an introduction. Jim.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. And we're very pleased that all of you could join us this morning. The inclement weather hasn't kept you away at all. Needless to say, the Granite Staters are very hardy people, and I appreciate you being here this morning. Again, appreciations to Neil and the Institute of Politics. The success that we enjoy at all these events would not be possible without the joint partnership with the Institute and what Neil does. It's just a great addition, and it's a great service to the constituents of the state to hear from policymakers, candidates, and other elected officials. And so I say thank you to St. A's and to Neil. For us, the New England Council, it's been a very busy season already. This past week, I think we've done 4 events. Monday, we were here with Congressman Chris Pappas. Tuesday, we're in Boston for an event with Congresswoman Lori Trahan. And then yesterday, we were in Washington, where we had a breakfast for Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander, and here today with the distinguished senator from Iowa. So it's been very, very busy. Yet we have more events coming up in the next couple of weeks. We have events with Senator Angus King on March 16th, and we have Representative Gabe Amo of Rhode Island will be speaking to the New England Council. Next week from today in Boston, we're going to have a discussion and a forum on rare diseases, and Congressman Jim McGovern will be a keynote speaker. So we have so many other events coming up. Joe Courtney from Connecticut will be speaking to the New England Council, because we are New England, and there is no organization that brings all of the elected officials from New England, governors, senators, and congressmen, to speak to the New England Council, which is just great. And needless to say, we have a big event coming up in May 13th and 14th in Washington, the Washington Leaders Conference, where we bring together about 300 people from all over New England, all 6 New England states, come down to Washington to listen to policymakers, people from the United States Senate, people from the United States Congress, people from the media, people from the administration. So you get to hear them, to meet them, as well as meet your fellow New Englanders and exchange, business cards and what have you. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful service, to say the least. And it's been very successful, and we're only as good as our sponsors, and anyone is interested in being a sponsor, and we have many of them already here, and Neil already mentioned the ones that support the Politics and Eggs. They support us in our Washington Leaders Conference as well. But today we're delighted to welcome Senator Joni Ernst, who represents the great state of Iowa. We're delighted to have her here. First elected in the year 2014, she made history as the first female combat veteran elected to the United States Senate, having honorable service in the United States Army Reserve and the Army National Guard, including deployment during the Iraq War. During her time in the United States Senate, she has drawn on her 23 years of military service as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, where she has worked to ensure that our military has the tools and the equipment they need to protect our nation and themselves. She's been a true champion for women in the armed services, from ensuring that they have properly fitted equipment to combat sexual assault in the military. As the chair of the Small Business Committee, she's worked with New England's own Senator Ed Markey to advance legislation just last week to reauthorize the SBIR and the STTR programs. They are programs that support innovative small businesses, including many right here in New England. Last fall, she announced that she would retire from Congress at the end of her current term. Needless to say, we are pleased that she could join us today to share her insights on some of the current issues before the United States Congress and the Senate, and her vision for the nation, her vision for the future of our nation. Please give a very, very warm welcome to the Honorable United States Senator Joni Ernst.
Thank you. such an honor to serve in the United States Senate, but I think the greatest honor of my life, thank you very much, the greatest honor of my life was serving in uniform under the flag of our great United States of America. So I did grow up on a farm in America's heartland. I am truly a daughter of the heartland. And my famous ad in 2014 when I was running for the United States Senate was to make 'em squeal. And I have been doing that ever since I came into the United States Senate. Washington is squealing, and I have racked up a number of wins for our taxpayers. As we get started today, I do want to address something that is on everyone's minds. And we are now just about a week into the strikes on Iran. And of course, the president, I think, took this action. He did not take this lightly, but it has been decisive. When he decided to strike Iran, he did it with fervor. He did it with what we used to call shock and awe, if you remember back in the day. But the reason he is doing this is for the safety and security of the United States of America. And as someone who did serve in the Middle East, this is deeply, deeply personal to me. For far too long, it's been 47 years now, that the Iranian regime has been threatening and targeting and taking the lives of our American citizens. So we saw a couple different administrations. It was Presidents Obama and Biden that helped fuel and fund Iran's proxy terrorism that targeted our own service members. But President Trump has now taken action on behalf of the safety and security of Americans and our homeland. And finally, our commander-in-chief is ensuring that neither Iran nor its proxies can ever take another one of our citizens' lives. And this objective is clear. Ensure that no American has to live under the threat of Iran-backed terror. Like every American, I have no desire to see a long, drawn-out war. I served in one of America's endless wars, quote unquote. But this mission is worthy of being completed. Look no further than October 7th of 2023. Now, much like our own September 11th, 2001, that will be burned on our hearts and our brains forever. For Israel, October 7th of 2023 will be burned on their hearts and their brains. Hamas-backed terrorists on that day massacred more than 1,200 men, women, and children, including nearly 50 Americans. And this is something folks here in our homeland tend to forget. On that fateful day, there were American citizens that were murdered in cold blood by an Iran-backed proxy terrorist called Hamas. 12 Americans were taken hostage on that day. I was in the region that night when this occurred, and I immediately went into Israel. I was on a Codel and it was a bipartisan, bicameral Codel. And we went into Israel, much to the chagrin of the American president. President Joe Biden was pushing me not to go into Israel. The State Department was pushing me not to go into Israel. But it was very important to all of us, again, it was a bipartisan Codel, to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel and make sure that they knew that America was with them. Thank you. So I witnessed that brutality up close and personal. We saw the after effects of what had happened on October 7th, and then 3 days into that ongoing war. And make no mistake, when Iran's leaders are out there chanting death to America, folks, they mean it. They mean it. Already, President Trump's peace through strength efforts are working. Since those October 7th attacks, I have been into the Middle East more than 10 times in pursuit of peace. For years, I've heard firsthand from the leaders across the Middle East about their fears of Iran and those proxies. But while Iran has launched attack after attack after attack against our partners this week, thinking the chaos would create fractured relationships between the United States and their countries, Iran thought wrong. Instead, our partners have actually been brought together, and it's been clearly demonstrated who the real enemy is. And those leaders in those Arab nations, not just Israel, because I have such strong partnerships in Israel, but I have strong partnerships with those Arab nations as well. And they have told me, as they called me over this last weekend, that they stand with the United States of America and they support our actions. For too long, they have also lived under the threat of the Iranian regime and are ready for a region where peace and prosperity can take hold and create a better future for their children. And we know a safer Middle East means a safer world. So now is the opportunity to bring an end to the decades of chaos in the Middle East and, at that same turn, protect every American life. The sooner the better. So I know we may have some questions on that, so please prepare yourself, get ready, get some questions written down, because we'll continue addressing this. I do want to acknowledge as well that in the first week of this action, and we saw the counterstrikes coming from Iran, we did have a strike on the port of Shuaibah in Kuwait that took the lives of 6 American soldiers. Those 6 American soldiers were assigned to the 103rd Sustainment Command Expeditionary, which is a unit located in Des Moines, Iowa. 2 of those individuals were Iowans. The other 4, God rest their souls, are from states around the region and around the United States of America. So please make sure that we are lifting them up in our prayers, because their families have had a very, very difficult week. So we'll address more of that later. I'll turn now to a little bit of work that I've been doing as the chair of the Small Business Committee. And I'm so glad, Jim, that you brought up the bill that Senator Markey and I actually got over the finish line this last week. It's pretty remarkable. We've been negotiating for a year. So when you hear that bipartisanship is dead and gone in Washington, D.C., I just want to remind everyone that there are issues that we come together on. There are issues that mean a lot to both parties. And believe me, if there is a way forward, we are going to find a way forward. So, you know, I work a lot on the Armed Services Committee, but the Small Business Committee is also a passion of mine. And I get to do work for people like me in Iowa that really depend upon small business to make their communities run. I said earlier, I grew up on a family farm, and our family farms are actually America's original small business. At a very young age, I learned how to balance a budget, which is kind of foreign to people in Washington. And I try to remind them more of that every single day, that we need to balance the budget. And the goal really is to save more than we spend. We really don't see that in Washington, D.C. And, you know, I got to meet a number of you when I first came in this morning. And I know that all of you know how to do that. We need to focus more on that in Washington, D.C. But as the chair of the Senate Small Business Committee, what I am doing is working to get Washington out of the way so that our small businesses can thrive. Now, when I travel river to river across the state of Iowa, we have 99 counties, famously do the 99 county tour every year. How many counties do you have in New Hampshire? 12. That's refreshing. Good for you. But yes, so it is not uncommon, and I know the politicians here travel to the counties as well. It is not unusual for those of us in Iowa to do all 99 counties every year. Chuck Grassley has been doing this for 40 plus years, every single year. Our governor does it, our lieutenant governor does it, our ag secretary in Iowa does it. We are intent on getting out and meeting with our small businesses, our farmers, Iowans, real people. And what I constantly hear as I'm out and about is a consistent thorn in their side, which is overregulation. And in fact, when I've been asked about federal regulations, Iowans are consistently telling me to bring back this simple message to Washington bureaucrats, which is stay out of our way. After the Biden administration had enacted more than $1.8 trillion in regulations that added 356 million more new hours of paperwork, I'm leading the charge to undo that damage. I'm working to disrupt the bloated bureaucratic way of how Washington wants things done. Simply, before any new regulation is placed on small businesses, I'm requiring federal agencies to, one, make sure that it is compliant with existing laws. A lot of our agencies actually don't follow the laws that are enacted by Congress. They put regulations in place that contradict what we as Congress have codified. I mean, it sounds so simple, but we actually have to go in there and enforce that. So that's number one. Number two, consider any direct or indirect cost placed upon our small businesses, because we know the federal government is really good at placing regulation without actually thinking about how it's going to impact small business. Any of you that are small business owners, or those of you that work with small businesses, understand that small businesses don't have teams of lawyers digging through federal regulation to make sure they're posting the appropriate paperwork or filing things on time. They don't have the manpower to do it. If Washington thinks more regulations are needed, it will have to prove it. And that's why I call this act the Prove It Act. Now, meanwhile, I'm also working hand in hand with the Trump administration to unleash our domestic manufacturing. This is a big deal, folks. As Main Street is roaring back to life, and we're seeing that under President Trump, my bipartisan Made in America Manufacturing Finance Act will allow small businesses to access the capital they need. This is another issue I hear. We need access to capital. This will help folks invest in new equipment, hire new employees, and grow their small businesses. And it will equip our nation to make Made in America the norm, not the exception. And to unlock the rest of the president's agenda, the Senate did our job to pass the Working Families Tax Cut. Used to be known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. So we are working hard to lower those taxes, cut the red tape, put rural America first, and grow the economy. Folks, this is the largest tax cut in American history, and I'm already hearing from Iowans about the impact to their taxes this year. And more of our folks will keep their hard-earned tax dollars in their own pockets, which is exactly the way it should be. But there is still more work to do. You know, we've got we've got the tax situation moving in the right direction, but we still have a lot of fraud that exists out there. Every American has seen these rampant reports, and all we have to do is look no further than my neighbor to the north, Minnesota. I'm sure all of you are aware of what has gone on in Minnesota. The fraud there, as we are scrutinizing it, could be up to $9 billion. $9 billion with a B. And that's a lot of money, folks. What we saw was a 23-year-old YouTube journalist, Nick Shirley, who went out there and he literally blew the lid off of a widespread scheme by going door to door at so-called child care centers in Minneapolis. And he revealed that multiple centers with few or even no kids, despite being paid millions of dollars, were taking in the money without having any level of auditing or oversight, paying millions and millions, again, to watch hundreds and hundreds of children, again, non-existent. Just this week, we learned that Minnesota government officials knew about this scheme as early as 2019, and they did nothing about it. Nothing. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. So we have a lot of reports now that have been done scrutinizing our federal budget. And as we provide oversight, as we involve the Office of Management and Budget, we are getting some numbers that are pretty astounding. What we have found is that 10% of our federal budget every single year is lost to fraud. 10% every single year is lost to fraud. I started my political career years ago as a county auditor, which is why I like to make Washington, D.C. squeal. And this is plainly unacceptable. This would not be acceptable in any business out across the United States. So why is it acceptable that we take 10% of what you send us in your tax dollars and give to fraudsters and schemesters? It's not okay. That's why I've been tasked with leading a legislative package to put stop to the fraud before it happens. The Senate Majority Leader has given me this opportunity to work with my colleagues to put together a bipartisan package that will prevent fraud and require the recovery of any money that's been ripped off from our taxpayers. So we have to end the waste, the fraud, the abuse before it happens. It's a big task, but we're up to it. So one way to crack down on fraud is to ensure that the fraudsters know that there are real consequences for stealing taxpayer money. However, in a little over a month, some of SBA's COVID programs will no longer be able to be prosecuted. Okay, we're running out of time to prosecute the fraudsters. Nearly 6 years ago, these funds were much needed, and they were lifelines for our small businesses during the pandemic. But since then, what we've uncovered, swindlers have exploited these programs at the taxpayer's expense, up to hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't want to let them get away, right? That's why I'm calling on Congress to pass my Small Business Administration Fraud Enforcement Extension Act. And this will extend the statutes of limitations for these programs and give investigators the time they need to continue going after these crooks. So let's pass it. We are getting a little difficulty from some of the Democrats on this issue. And we're going to continue pushing them because we need to ensure that folks across America know that fraud is unacceptable. So, beyond the fraud, I've always said that if you can't find waste in Washington, D.C., you're simply not looking. Too many of you recognize it, but too many of you work so hard to keep the lights on at your businesses, to keep your doors open. But Uncle Sam, our nation's largest landlord, he doesn't care. He's been sitting on unused and unnecessary properties. He's paying out over $81 million to maintain underutilized offices every year. And this includes nearly 7,700 vacant buildings and another 2,000 that are largely empty across the United States. Not to mention the billions of dollars these fixer-uppers would demand in much-needed renovations and overdue upgrades. So no wonder, folks, as we look at all of this, with the fraud, with the waste that we see in the government, our Uncle Sam is now over $38 trillion in debt. And it's way past time to downsize. And so I'm working to sell off some of these unused office spaces, and we are actually making progress. Just last week, I did join our USDA Secretary, Brooke Rollins, and the GSA to announce that the largely empty South Ag building of the USDA in Washington, D.C. will officially now be for sale. And it's about time we put one of these abandoned buildings on the chopping block and save our taxpayers over $1 billion. So we've got one down, but there's a lot more to go. So just in closing, because I really do want to answer some of your questions. 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago, Iowans elected me as the first female combat veteran to serve in the United States Senate. And they did so with a mission, and that was to make Washington, D.C. squeal. And they are squealing. I have upset a lot of people along the way by asking the right questions of the right people and making sure that we are protecting those dollars that you so graciously send us every single year are protected. Just last year, Congress passed the first rescissions package since 1992, and we saved $9 billion. California gave up on federally funding its rail project that is billions over budget and years behind schedule. That'll save our taxpayers $4 billion right now. We've got bureaucrats back to work, and we're selling off the federal government's bloated real estate portfolio. There is a lot more to do in Washington, D.C. We need to have a lot more common sense. And I will not be running for re-election. So I will be handing off my portfolio to those that express an interest in continuing this tradition in Washington, D.C. of saving your taxpayer dollars. But as I am in my last year here in the United States Senate, I will not be slowing down at all. I have dedicated my life to service. And as we usher in our nation's 250th year, I'm encouraged as we have great Republicans that are working with President Trump to create a stronger, safer, and more prosperous America. Truly the keys to unlocking our American dream. So growing up as an ordinary Iowan, I was given a blessed opportunity. This has been an extraordinary opportunity to serve. And it's been an honor to dedicate my life to the service, not just to my great state of Iowa, but also our great United States of America. I am so thankful for the work that I have been able to do in the United States Senate. But, a lot of this rests upon the shoulders of my Iowans who provide me with great input and great ideas. And I know that this is upon your shoulders as well, to provide that great input and those great ideas to your elected officials as well. So thankful for the work that you do here in the Granite State as well. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. God bless you for letting me spend some time with you this morning. Thank you so much.
So we have a few minutes for questions, and if I just ask the first question, there are 12 appropriation bills, 11 of them have passed, but there's one that's really causing a lot of discomfort in both sides of the aisle, and that's the Homeland Security Fund. The Democrats are adamant, saying we got to make changes on the ICE. We got to have body cams, maybe remove the mask, and maybe eliminate the administrative warrants in place of judicial. So those are three that they seem to be really stuck on, the Democrats. And I believe there was an amendment offered just recently, maybe yesterday, that the Democrats said, let's put a separate amendment in to fund TSA, to fund Coast Guard, to fund Secret Service, so they get paid while we work out this sticky problem about how do we address ICE in particular. And your thoughts on how this is going to play out?
Yes, thank you. And that has been on everybody's minds. And DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and that final appropriations bill is the sticky wicket. I mean, it is out there every single day. Believe me, as I'm coming through TSA at the airports here, I'm thinking about those TSA officers not getting their pay. They are required to show up to work. All essential workers are, and yet they won't receive a paycheck until we get this thing over the finish line. But you brought up, Democrats were saying, well, let's parse it out. Instead of passing just the appropriations bill, as we should and normally do, they want to pull bits and pieces apart. And the thought on the Republican side is if we start doing that, they're going to do it with every single appropriations bill moving forward. And we can't do that. What if we have somebody that's leading our, say, Department of Navy, and they're controversial, and Democrats don't like that person. And so they say, okay, well, we're going to fund the Department of War. We'll do the DOD appropriations budget, except we're not going to fund the Department of Navy. You know, this could go on endlessly. And they can come up with any number of excuses not to fund bits and pieces of appropriations packages. So we can continue working on this, but at a time when we are engaged in an ongoing operation in the Middle East where we know Iranians have been let through the open border policy into the interior of the United States under President Joe Biden, and that they have sleeper cells that are positioned around the globe, we know that we have security risks here in the homeland, not just Iranians, but others. And we're not funding the Department of Homeland Security. It's ludicrous. So we don't want to parcel out bits and pieces of appropriations packages. We want to see one package move forward and be funded. Now, a little bit about that package. ICE, which is the sticky wicket in the room, ICE is only 11% of the DHS appropriations package. 11%. And the irony with this is that ICE is already funded. We funded it in a package last year. So they have money, and their officers are going to be paid. The Democrats won't talk about that. Okay, so what they're doing is hurting everybody else in the department when the ones they're going after are just fine. They're fine. So, but we do have a change, and I wonder how you all saw the news yesterday that we've had a change at the Department of Homeland Security. I wonder how that will change the trajectory of this package now.
Well, some Democrats say we're not interested in the personality change. We're interested in the policy change. So it seems the debate's going to continue. But you're right. I think ICE is funded until 29. So it's not. Gentleman had his hand up. Just identify yourself. There's a mic right here.
Randy McKee from New Hampshire Aerospace and Defense Consortium. In the state of New Hampshire, we have 845 manufacturers that support the DOW. 832 of them are small businesses. We have two issues right now in Senator Shaheen's office, and when you hear me, I hope we can get your support on this as well. The first is helping small businesses be seen and heard and have an opportunity to compete on a national level. This is not just a New Hampshire program. It was designed for the entire country, adopted by NASA, and hopefully adopted soon by the MIB and the DOW writ large. So the first is the democratization of the supply chain for the small business. And the second one is the unfunded congressional mandate of the cybersecurity maturity model. This is going to cause massive pain in the small business manufacturing community. It's sitting in front of us. It turns into law in 2 years. It costs small businesses anywhere between $50,000 and $300,000 just to get certified, and that's with no guarantee of business on the other side. So I implore you, when you see these come up and you're in those committees with Senator Shaheen, who's been a tremendous supporter of us, please, please, please listen and know that it doesn't just affect New Hampshire, which it will tremendously. We expect 50% loss of small manufacturers in the DOW supply chain.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Really do appreciate that information. And I will reach out to Senator Shaheen's office if she has all of the information on that. And then I will work with her on that. And what we are looking, because we had this incredible bill that Senator Markey and I got over the finish line the other day, since we got that one out of the way, that was one of the largest issues we had hanging out there. Now we can take up additional bipartisan bills. So that might be something that, perhaps if we can work on a fix, then we could maybe get that through the Small Business Committee. And we've got great partners in the House as well. So I will get with Jean and we'll visit about that. So thank you. And we were just looking at the picture up here of Jean and Billy up here. I know Billy as well, and I know just again, people think bipartisanship is dead and long gone. But Jean Shaheen has been a wonderful partner, in spite of political differences. When we find things that we can work on together, she absolutely is one of my go-tos. So really appreciate it. She is on the Small Business Committee and the Armed Services Committee. And we're working a lot of issues together. So thank you. Thanks for raising that issue. I'll get with her team.
Other questions? Senator?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Oh, I got one here.
We got
Another Iowan here.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with AARP, and this is a question we have for you. Each day, 48 million Americans help their loved ones to remain independent in their homes and communities. These family caregivers sacrifice time and money in providing $600 billion annually in unpaid support. I've had some experience personally with this. My mother was in assisted living facility in the state of Washington. She entered at about age 96. She exited at age 100, and she died last November.
I'm sorry.
It cost her and me $383,255 for those 4.5 years.
Right.
What actions can you take to help family care?
Yes, and thank you for that. So the question, when you have family caregivers that are providing support for loved ones in their homes, it does cost those families lost wages from work and so forth when someone has to give up a job, or you all know as we have aging parents. So there are a number of caregiver bills out there. I actually had sponsored one of the more of a tax cut or tax break bill a number of years ago for those that were providing assistance in homes. So we just have to figure out that mechanism. How do we make it work, and how can we get additional co-sponsors and people to buy into this? But I think this is becoming much more of an issue now, and we recognize that keeping people in their homes is much better for them. We want them to be in their homes as long as they can comfortably and safely be there. But that does mean they either have to have a paid caregiver or they have a very loving family member that is stepping up to do that job. So there's a number of pieces of legislation out there. We've just got to figure out how to get everybody kind of coalesced around one movement so that we can actually pass something through the House and the Senate. but it's really worthy. So I mentioned my daughter and my grandson, but I have a mother that is starting to struggle with those memory issues. She is in her own home, and she is one of the reasons that I will be leaving the United States Senate. And it's important. I think family is number one. Well, God's number one. Family is number two for me. And it is important that we take care of our parents, and we do it however we can. So thank you for caring for your mother. But and I would encourage AARP and other organizations as well to really spend the time on the Hill with your members of Congress and push this issue. Because it's great if I can push it, but they need to hear from constituents as well. So please do. Thank you.
We can only take one more question because the senator needs to catch a flight back to Washington. So if anybody has one question, if you don't, I'll ask the last question. In New England, we have an awful lot of alternative sources of energy, in particular wind. We have a major project in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Revolution, 80% funded, 80% completed, and was stopped by the administration. And there seems to be more work stoppage on other sites. Your experience with wind in Iowa, tell me about it, and maybe you can enlighten many of us here.
I know this is not an area that the president is particularly fond of, you may have heard. But my experience with wind in Iowa, we have wind turbines all across the state of Iowa. And this has been a great source of energy for us. And my senior senator, Senator Chuck Grassley, is actually in Iowa. He is known as the grandfather of wind energy, because he was one of those that really pushed this effort, along with our Republican governor, Terry Branstad. So wind is not new to us in Iowa. Nearly 80% of the electric that Iowans consume every single day comes from wind energy. Nearly 80%. Wind energy. It's steady and it's consistent in Iowa. It doesn't work for every state. It works for Iowa. And I have tried to stress that with the president as well, because it does work for us. And our electric rates, pretty darn low. You know, we've figured out how to make it work for us. Evidently, you've probably figured out how to make it work here in New England. So I'm a proponent of wind energy. I'm an all of the above girl. You know, I believe in all sources. You know, I'm for fossil fuels. I'm for clean energy. Whatever makes it sustainable and affordable for our constituencies. That's what we should be focused on.
Well, with that, I want to thank the senator for stopping by to the Politics and Eggs here at St. A's, and wish her much success between now and the end of the year, and also wish her much success in her next chapter of her life of book. So it's an honor to have you here, and continued success in all your endeavors.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, so very much. Thank you.